Writing the West. Stories and poems by Rick Stever. Read by Michael Messner and friends. The Pardon. Tillamook's first jail was nothing more than a shack of fir logs covered with crude wooden shakes. One of the first guests was a hog stealer. Anyway, some folks claimed he was a hog stealer. He maintained he was not. One night, the man escaped, and the next day he casually strolled into the offices of the Oregon Statesman in Salem. He told the editor,
"I have been done a great injustice. I was arrested and convicted in Tillamook for hog stealing, but I'm not guilty. Bears ate those hogs. I just can't prove it."
He reasoned,
"Now, since I'm your only subscriber in Tillamook, I demand you obtain a pardon for me from the governor, or I'll cancel my subscription."
Well, a paying subscriber was highly valued, and a meeting was arranged with Governor Gibbs. The governor listened to the convicted man tell his side of the story, and then he asked,
"But if you were convicted in Tillamook and sentenced to jail, how in the world did you get here in my office?"
"Easy,"
replied the man.
"I just crawled up the inside logs, pushed the shakes aside, and jumped off the roof. And now, Governor, my pardon, please."
The governor shook his head, thought for a moment, and offered a solution.
"Perhaps I could write a letter on your behalf suggesting that you may have been imprisoned without due process of law."
The man smiled in triumph.
"That would be every bit as good as a pardon. No one in Tillamook is going to have any idea what due process of the law means." "Yep, good as a pardon."
A hard trail. There was a father, mother, and 9 children in the Smith family. They started west over the Oregon Trail in 1846. Not all of them would make it to the Willamette Valley. William Smith was captain of a number of wagons trying to blaze a new route through southern Oregon. He led his family and the others into Canyon Creek in the Umpqua Range, but a sudden wind trapped them in downed trees. Well, the others told William they'd have to give up the wagons and ride the oxen, but he was of fighting stock.
"No, I got a wife and 9 children. Louisa is deathly sick, and you know Thaddeus is crippled and can't ride. I'm taking my spring wagon. Now, we can make it, but do as you please if you got no confidence in me. Now, maybe I'm the only man around here's got any guts."
As William was exhorting the men, he suddenly sank to his knees and cried,
"Oh, Lord, have mercy upon me."
And he died of a heart attack. The spring wagon that he was determined to take to the end of the trail was torn apart and used to make a coffin for William. His wife Ellen cried over his grave, and then packed herself and the 9 children on the 2 oxen. The rough trip took its toll, and little Louisa's condition deteriorated. The last words Louisa whispered to her mother were,
"Bury me deep. Pile rocks on top. I don't want the wolves to get me."
Somehow, Ellen was able to make it safely to the Willamette Valley with the remainder of her family intact. Starting with a donation land claim, she carved out an existence and raised her 8 children. November snow. Fresh storms spit snow, coating branches and trees as well as the trail I am walking. Snow falling in silence, snow now curling around the gnarled feet of pine trees. Wind grows stronger, shaping the snow into drifts. Finally, I grow cold and turn back, following obscure footprints and long afternoon shadows to find my warm cabin in the woods. Smelling the swirl of wood smoke, stamping my boots off at the door, stepping inside. Spring is far away. John Day. John Day was born in Kentucky and became a mountain man in the upper Missouri River country. In 1810, he joined the Astoria expedition, marching overland to the mouth of the Columbia River. Along the way, John Day became sick. He was abandoned along the Snake River, along with a friend of his, Ramsey Crooks, who refused to leave his friend. Crooks later wrote of their suffering.
John Day was so weak that when he sat down, he could not rise again without help. We went without food to eat and water to drink. Death seemed inevitable. A very large wolf came prowling around our camp, and John Day, with great exertion and good luck, shot the ferocious animal dead. And to this fortunate hit, I think we owed our lives. The flesh of the wolf we cut up and dried and laid it by for some future emergency, and in the meantime feasted upon the skin, nor did we throw away the bones, but pounded them between stones and made a broth, which in our present circumstances we found very good. For 2 months we wandered about, barely sustaining life with our utmost exertion. All this time we kept traveling to and fro until we happened by mere chance to reach the Columbia River. We proceeded to the falls, where there were Indians in considerable numbers. The Indians closed in upon us with guns pointed and bows drawn, and by force stripped us of our clothes, ammunition, rifles, knives, and everything else, leaving us naked as the day we were born.
John Day and Ramsey Crooks were rescued by a group of fur traders and taken to Fort Astoria. The following spring, John Day joined a group of men making an overland journey to New York. On the way, the strain of his experiences the previous year caused him to lose his mind. He tried to kill himself with a pistol, but the bullet only grazed his scalp. He was placed under guard and returned to Fort Astoria, where he died. Roving Spirit. 16-year-old Maria Smith had a roving spirit. She claimed what she wanted most from life was to become a world traveler and see new places. One evening at supper, her father announced the family was moving to Oregon. Maria whooped with joy and flew out the door to tell her friends. She would not have been so happy if she had known all the hardships that awaited the family on the Oregon Trail crossing. First, they encountered hostile natives along the Platte River. An arrow fired from a willow thicket narrowly missed Maria, sailing past her and killing one of the oxen. Then, shortly after crossing the Continental Divide at South Pass, the leaders of the wagon train took a shortcut. The trail they followed led through dry, desolate country with very little feed for the stock and hardly any water. The wagons had to be abandoned, and the remaining supplies were packed on the backs of the oxen while the emigrants were forced to walk. Although none of the emigrants died, they suffered terribly before eventually reaching the Willamette Valley, arriving just before Christmas in 1846. Mr. Smith took a donation land claim on rich bottom ground bordering the Luckiamute River. When Maria reached legal age, she took an adjoining land claim. Apparently, her adventuresome spirit and desire to travel had been satisfied, because for the remainder of her life, she was content to live on her homestead along the Luckiamute River. You've been listening to Writing the West. The stories and poetry in this podcast are by Rick Stieber and appear in books by him. Log on to www.rickstieberauthor.com to find out more. This program was produced by Michael Messner by permission of the author. Special thanks to Michael Tucker, Rachel Pulliam, and Art Shingler. Thank you for listening.